Something is wrong. The ship is not responding properly. Clemison directs his brainwaves to the neural contacts, but they are not having the right effect. The ship is drifting out of control. He noticed it on the last trip, but not as strongly as this. Then he was able to bring the vast vessel into dock safely and deliver the food with no real problem. As a desperate measure, he disconnects the neural system, and with his most delicate pair of synthetic arms, he removes the guard panel of the instruments before him. He can detect nothing wrong, nothing malfunctioning, yet he is still drifting away from his course, out of control. If there is nothing wrong with the ship, it must be something external. Beneath him, he could see brilliant white flecks on the gray ocean surface, icebergs. He's never seen them so far south before, but that is not really surprising, for the ice has been pushing southwards further each year as the weather has been cooling. That should not worry anybody, because the whole of civilization is well guarded against changes in the climate. Only those scattered tribes of primitives will have problems. The presence of icebergs does not disturb Clemison. What is alarming is the direction in which the vessel is traveling over them. It is evidently the guidance system that is causing the trouble, but that cannot be. The guidance is worked from the Earth's magnetic field. A surge of alarm sweeps through Clemison's puny body and is instantly neutralized by a burst of sedative generated in the bulbous sac of synthetic glands grafted to his back. If the Earth's magnetic field is varying beyond the limits that the machinery of the ship can tolerate, then there may be trouble for all the trade and communication around the world. It cannot possibly be that, he thinks. More likely it is the strong winds that are accompanying the edge of the ice pack. The sensors do not show any winds that are stronger than expected. Something is seriously wrong. Desperately, he brings his manipulator hands into play to work the seldom used manual controls. That does not have any effect either. The ship is descending at a great speed, faster than he can correct it. Even if he could stabilize it, there is no way of telling which is the right way to go. He's totally lost. Cold gray ocean and glistening icebergs are rushing up to meet him. With his feet and his most powerful pair of arms, he braces himself for the impact. For the 10th day in succession, the clouds have obscured the mountaintop. The sunlight that does filter through is not enough to activate the solar collectors and keep the food generators working at full efficiency. For the first time in his life, Yamo finds his work overwhelming and his efforts largely fruitless. He does not control the process. He just inspects the machinery that repairs the devices that do control the process. He does not think that there is anybody living now who knows enough to control the process, and now this particular plant is collapsing because the machinery is slowing to a halt. There is no power coming in from the solar collectors, nor is there any coming in through the network from other collectors in the area. Everyone else is having the same problem. What is more, power storage facilities are almost exhausted. His massive legs transport him, cocooned in his organic cradle, down to the depths of the factory. He has lost count of how many times he has made that journey in the past few days. It is all to no avail. No, as there is nothing he can do when he gets there. It is still as silent as ever, but the smell of decay as nutrients and raw materials rot is stronger. There's something disrupting the weather system, something that was never allowed for when the manufacturing process was designed. Alright, the climates are gradually becoming cooler as time goes on, but this is a gradual process, and something which was taken into account when the whole system was set up. It should not bring about effects that are being produced now. His food cake appears at his dispenser. At least working in the plant, he has first call on what food there is left. The door hisses open. Someone else stands there, someone he does not recognize. The light is behind the figure, and all that Yamo can make out is the silhouette, the lumpy shape, the standard organic cradle with the powerful legs and a selection of arms dangling. What is this person doing here? No one has ever come into his module before. Must be important. Then he realizes with the power deteriorating, the communication systems must be failing as well. There has been no communication for outside at all for days. He turns to check his screens, his monitor. Before he can do that, he feels a pair of handling arms seize him. Manipulators rip into his own cradle, reaching for his head. Dimly, as Yamo's biological backups rupture and collapse in a spray of blood surrogate and synthetic hormones, he realizes that he must be the first murder victim for centuries. Murder, too, for the oldest of causes. The newcomer steps over the pulsating form of Yamo's broken crater and picks up the little cake of food. They laughed when it first started, the farmers and the fishermen. They could see that the ocean currents were changing. They knew that somewhere out there, at a great depth below the sea surface, was one of the great ocean current power generators that supplied energy for the ticks. Now the movement of water had changed, and it would not be working anymore. How are the ticks going to keep themselves alive now in their monstrous living suits in their food factories? Now, however, it is not so funny. The new weather patterns have brought unceasing rain, and the crops have failed. The fish have not come to the river this year, as though they could not find their way to the spawning ground. The bees are in disarray. They cannot see the sun, and their internal directional instincts failing them. It seems to be happening throughout nature. Every year the birds move north and south at the same time, but not so this year. They do not seem to know their directions. It is affecting people, too. The trading caravans that move between settlements are becoming confused and lost. Men and women admit that they are finding it difficult to find their way even along well-known routes. Then there are the sicknesses. Diseases that have never been known before are beginning to afflict those who spend their time outside. It seems to be something to do with the sun, which whenever it appears from behind the unfamiliar clouds is harsh and glaring. It burns the skin, and it produces growths that do not go away until the victim dies. The collapse is coming, all right, just as the farmers and fishermen have always predicted, but it is not restricted to the ticks. It is going to affect everybody, those who deny nature and those who live with it. The hazy grassland stretches away, green and yellow, to infinity, and the herd of grazing creatures move gracefully along it. There are about 20 of them, the adults moving along on the outside of the group, with the youngsters in the center. This is some sort of instinctive arrangement, serving no real purpose, as there are no dangerous animals to defend against. They have no real speech, these creatures, since all their needs are simple and amply met. Food grows all around, there are no enemies, and they have the companionship of their own kind. Towering clouds are building up overhead. The plains dwellers are aware, but only dimly, the conditions are changing from year to year. There seems to be more rain than there used to be, but this is no problem. It only means that the grass, their food, grows more prolifically. It also means that new types of plants are beginning to grow, saplings that will develop into bushes and trees. Still, there will be plenty of grass for them. As they move slowly through the waving leaves and stems, they become aware of a distant humming noise. Looking up, their leader sees an oval, spiky shape floating above the horizon away onto one side. Such things go over now and again, but they have no effect on the plains dwellers who barely notice them. However, this one is different. It is not pursuing its usual straight, unwavering course, but seems to be tilting to one side and descending in a very irregular manner. This is unusual enough for the herd's leader to stop and look at it, as does the rest of the herd. The shape wobbles and finally drops into the plain some distance away. It immediately is engulfed in a white flash that fades into a billowing red and black ball, rising and spreading. A little time later, the explosion is heard as the sound sweeps across the open countryside, and the infants and parents alike startle and alarm, but feel no fear. The leader, however, does see the danger. The burst of red is spread as a fire across the landscape, and it is coming towards them. He has seen this before. Fires are commonplace on the grasslands, and is knowledgeable enough not to run away from it when it is sweeping towards the herd. He assesses the direction of the wind and moves his herd along right angles to it, so the fire will eventually travel by them. He need not have troubled. The clouds that have been building up throughout the afternoon now open, and a curtain of torrential rain appears behind the herd and the fire drifting over them, soaking them instantly. By the time the downpour has passed, nothing is left of the fire but a steaming black smudge on the distant landscape. The erstwhile flying strape is steaming and black as well, but the plains dwellers ignore it and continue on their journey. It has nothing to do with them. The advantage of living in a temperate, deciduous forest is that there are so many different things to eat at different times of the year. In the spring, there are delicious shoots and soft buds. In the summer, the trees and bushes are full of leaves, and in autumn is the time of fruits. It is the winter that gives the problems. With any luck, a forest dweller has eaten so much throughout the rest of the year that it has built up enough fat to enable it to exist through the lean months, or maybe sensible enough to gather food such as nuts during the autumn and store them away for winter. Throughout the year, too, there are insects, grubs, and small animals hiding under stones and beneath the bark of trees. Temperate forest dwellers are designed as omnivores in order to take advantage of all those circumstances. Hoot is typical. He looks very much like his great to the power of 20 grandfather, who was one of the first genetically viable forest dwellers to be engineered. He is built as a climbing creature, with long arms and legs, but he is just as comfortable on the ground. His teeth are quite generalized, able to cope with a wide range of foods, from soft fruits to hard insects. His main senses consist of sight, smell, taste, and hearing. In fact, in outward appearance, he resembles the ancestral human being. Inside his long body, however, his digestive system contains special organs for treating particularly tough food, and self-sustaining colonies of specialized bacteria that can break down silica and cellulose, allowing him to digest just about anything he swallows. His mind, though, is dull. That was part of the plan as well, as it had been believed that such a creature would survive better without the typical human power of logic and reasoning. Its food was all around it, so it wouldn't need to experiment to try and make its life more efficient, since its environment would sustain it perfectly adequately. The prototype worked so well that many others were engineered, and now there are self-sustaining colonies throughout the temperate forests of the northern hemisphere. Nevertheless, Hoot finds something new in his forest. On top of the hill, close to his own trees, there has always been an array of glistening things, like the leaves of a tree, but bigger and square. Hoot has always known that something big exists deep within the hill, connected to these strange things. A minor sense that came to the surface when his ancestor's furry pelt was engineered was a sensitivity to electrical fields. A tingling of his hair roots tell him when he is in the presence of electrical machinery. He understands none of this, of course, but he knows that this sense tells him that something important lies beneath the hill, and this something as big, as important to the lumpy creatures that he has always thought of as some kind of distant relation to his own people. An unfamiliar noise and increased electrical disturbances brought him to the hill this morning. Flying things came from all around the sky and descend, disgorging more lumpies than there are woodlice in his tree. Sometimes when his own people are angry with one another, say if he wants to mate with the same female as somebody else, he can sense the tension in the air. Anger and hatred are obvious and communicated without noise, and it is the same here. Hundreds of lumpies have gathered together and they are angry. They want to get into the hill and are pushing at the door. Eventually they break through, and other lumpies come out and tackle them. Who has never seen such a fight? Dozens of lumpies tearing away at one another, pulling each other apart, stamping each other into the ground. His own people do not do things like that. Eventually the battle moves on into the hill. The noise and the chaos retreat underground, leaving the soil littered with the dead. Stealthily, Hoot descends from his tree and scampers over to the site. The first dead lumpy is still warm and oozing blood. He sniffs all around the corpse, using his selective sense of smell to ignore the main odors and concentrate on the smells that seem more interesting. He lowers his mouth to the seeping wound and experimentally licks the blood. It is good. He licks some more, using his tongue as an organ of touch to find the parts that may be palatable. Then he starts drinking. His digestive system was designed to absorb almost anything. This is as big a feast as he has seen in many a day, and others of his kind should have a part of it. Rearing up to his full height, he lets fly his own recognition yodel, summoning all of his brethren who are within earshot. It looks as if this is going to be an easier winter than last, as he hears the crashing and scampering of his relatives approaching through the leaves and undergrowth. He turns back to his feast. With a feeling of contentment, he sinks his teeth into the synthetic flesh and artificial organs of the creature before him. Some things just cannot be predicted, Durian's skill muses, but he knew that the end would come as something like this. Mankind has built defenses against everything that nature can inflict. Throughout human history, the waste products of civilization built up and poisoned the air, the seas, and the land. When the damage became too much to bear, technology was brought in and halt the process. Nature repaired the damage eventually. Now processes have been found that produce little or no waste, but it has not been enough. Climates have been gradually changing for ages. Now mankind can shelter away in artificial habitats immune to the changes in weather conditions, but it has not been enough. Only so much food can be grown or manufactured. The only way to guard against shortages has been to regulate populations so that there are never too many people for the available resources, but it has not been enough. There are larger scale processes that man can do nothing about, no matter how sophisticated the technology. The moon goes around the earth goes around the sun. The movement of the earth's metallic core generates the magnetic field that has subtle influences on everything on its surface. It has always been known from the geological record that the magnetic field changes. At times in the past, there have been a magnetic north pole at the geographic north pole, and a magnetic south pole at the geographic south. At the other times, there is a magnetic south pole at the geographic north, and vice versa. It has never been fully understood how these change, when they change, and how long the changes take to occur. There must be times during the changeover when there is no magnetic field whatsoever. This must have an influence on just about everything. The Earth is undergoing just such a change now, and there is no magnetic field. The most obvious effect is on the technology of transportation and navigation. With no magnetic field, compasses and everything that works on a compass principle must cease to function. There are natural processes of navigation as well. Most creatures have organs sensitive to the Earth's magnetic field, which help them find their way about. The mechanics of fish and bird migration and the homing processes of bees have been disrupted and are now ceasing to work. Humans have this ability too, but it has never really been used. Only now that the field has collapsed is its absence noticed, with even the most sensible and level-headed of people becoming confused about direction and time and many other subtle things. In the natural world, this should not really matter, since the magnetic effect is relatively minor, and most animals navigate by the sun and stars. However, with no magnetic field, the ozone layer of the atmosphere breaks down, just as in the bad old days of pollution. This allows for deeper penetration into the atmosphere by ultraviolet solar radiation, upsetting the normal climatic patterns and producing abnormal wind circulation and hence abnormal ocean currents. The resulting overcast skies break down any biological stellar navigation systems. On top of all that, there is the harmful biological effect of ultraviolet rays. Burns and skin cancers develop wherever the sun does shine through, and birth abnormalities are increasing to well above normal levels. Then there is the disruption of radio waves through cosmic interference. Each human community is now effectively isolated from any other, denied both the exchange of information and physical travel. Modern civilization and technology are not tuned to any of this. Durian Skeel knew that all this was going to happen, and he tried to warn people from the start. They would not listen. He takes a grim satisfaction in the knowledge that he, and only he, foresaw the collapse of human civilization. It's yet to be slow from a human point of view, but rapid and catastrophic on the historical scale. Eventually the magnetic field will reestablish itself with the opposite polarity before, maybe within months, or it may take decades, but it will be too late to rescue civilization as it hurls downwards into rubble. He is not waiting. Purposefully and methodically, he disconnects each of his life support devices and lapses into peaceful oblivion. Beneath the tumultuous surface of the ocean, the aquas swim around in a leisurely fashion. Something is different, they do not quite know what. A huge machine with its constantly turning rotors, odors, and fans is now still and silent for the first time in memory. That has nothing to do with them. It was built by the strange beings from above the surface. The movement of the water is different, but that has no effect on them either. The fish and the sea plants are still there. Even now, the sea life is beginning to colonize the vast dead structures. This may be a good thing for them. They do not have to travel so far to find their food, and the new children that are born seem to have a better chance of survival when that food is more available. What is more, the knowledge that has gone out across the seabed, and the aquas from other areas are moving in. It looks as if the population is growing quite fast in this area, as they no longer travel in small family groups. A whole interactive society may develop in this region, with all the advantages what that entails. Things may change from now on.